From the shocking moment a man narrowly avoids oncoming traffic after landing his plane on a highway, to a nerve-wracking video of a passenger plane spinning out of control in Istanbul. Here are 5 emergency landings that were caught on camera. A non-stop flight from Milan, Italy to Istanbul takes just under 3 hours. It's a routine trip for Turkish Airlines, as vacationers from both countries are eager to explore the other. But for 102 passengers and crew aboard Flight 1878, the up-and-down journey was all but routine. On April 25th of 2015, an Airbus A320 descended into Istanbul just before 10:30 a.m. Before touching the runway, the plane rolled and slammed the starboard gear into the ground, damaging the wing and fuel line. The pilot had to pull back up to try again, and that's when chaos officially ensued.
Sağ motor yanıyor bak, çöktü uçak ya. Eyvah, iniş takım açık değil.
İtfaiye nerede? Takım yanıyor. İtfaiye çok yavaş kaldı ama.
Eyvah. Çıktı dışarı ya.
Çok sıkıntı herhalde. Sıvaklar açtılar.
Evet. Şeyimi alayım. Şunun şeylerini video alsana. Telefonum var, çekmiyor.
A passenger noticed a fire in the starboard engine as the pilot brought the plane down for another landing. You can see smoke and flames billowing out the side as the plane glides along the runway. Damage to the starboard gear forced the plane to spin out, doing a complete 180 before stopping for good. Fire trucks race out to the scene as the emergency exits open up. Thankfully, nobody got hurt in the crash, and the pilots blamed a pocket of wake turbulence from the plane that landed before them. A wake turbulence is an atmospheric disturbance left behind by passing planes. It consists mainly of wingtip vortices, which are like sideways cyclones that can last up to 3 minutes after an aircraft generates lift. The moral of the story? Don't tailgate planes.
If you want to eat healthy and feel your best, you gotta try Kachava. Kachava is the world's healthiest
Tailgate planes. Swain County sits on the far west tip of North Carolina. With just over 14,000 people living in the area, Swain probably doesn't experience the big city traffic of Charlotte or Raleigh. But for a handful of drivers traveling down US Route 74, they might have traded this harrowing experience for gridlock traffic. On July 3rd of 2022, pilot Vincent Fraser flew his small recreational plane through the clear Carolina skies. He was in the area for a family trip flying with his father-in-law when something didn't feel right with the plane. He soon realized the engine wasn't getting fuel and that he had no choice but to set her down on Route 74. He flies over 2 cars on the right and guides the aircraft towards the center lane. Oncoming traffic sees the plane and has plenty of time to get out of the way. Eventually, the wheels touch down on pavement and Vincent brings the aircraft to a safe halt without any injury. While talking with a local news station, Vincent thanked his Marine Corps training, saying, "You go into a robotic mode. You don't question anything, you just do it." Before they landed, Vincent's father-in-law looked at him and said he trusted the skilled pilot to get them down safely. From then on, you could hear a pin drop until they were safely on the ground. Thankfully, traffic was relatively light that day in Swain County, North Carolina. Afula is a mid-sized city in Israel's northern district. The area has changed hands throughout history as different peoples claimed it as their own up until 1948. After World War II, when the State of Israel was finally established, groups of Jewish immigrants from Yemen, Iraq, and Romania settled in the city. On June 24th of 2014, a skilled pilot took a new student up in his Cessna 152 for a training exercise. While emergency landings probably weren't on the schedule, the student got a valuable lesson in remaining calm under pressure.
מגידו שלום, אלפא אינדיה וויסקי מתקרב עפולה 1500 לנחיתה. אינדיה וויסקי מגידו 1500 מתקרב לעפולה. אתה לוקח? אוי אוי אוי. אני לוקח. פלוטו. מגידו. מיד איתך. יש לי עומד כבוד סימנו. פטל גולף 1500 לשרון, לפי 293. טוב, כולל לנחיתת עומק בשטח. 293. פלוטו מיידי, אלפא אינדיה וויסקי. וואי. פלוטו, אלפא אינדיה וויסקי, מיידי. אלפא אינדיה וויסקי, מה התקלה? מנוע מגמגם עומד להיכבות, אני באזור עפולה, מבצע נחיתת אונס בשטח. נחיתת אונס בשטח, האם אתה תצליח לנחות? חיובי. עוד אתה צריך שנשלח לך איזושהי עזרה? אני הולך לנחות באזור המזרחי של עפולה. קיבלתי באזור המזרחי של עפולה. אם אתה צריך, אתה תעדכן אותי. נכון. אנחנו נוחתים בשדה? כן. תחזיק את עצמך, תגן על הראש. נכנסים בעצים.
As the instructor and student fly over Afula, the engine suddenly stalls, forcing the instructor to take control. The student sits back and keeps his hands off the stick while his teacher radios in for an emergency landing. He says he has to land in the field and begins his descent towards the open area. He eventually spins the plane, now heading back the way they came, and touches down on the grass. The instructor puts the plane perfectly between two trees, and the collision stops them in their tracks. According to the incident report, the plane only suffered minor damage, and neither the student nor the instructor got hurt in the landing. Now, we can't say if the student continued with his lessons, or if this experience grounded him for the rest of his life.
All right, guys, if you've been injured in a car accident, you have to check this out. So, I just got this check from my attorney.
Or if this experience grounded him for the rest of his life. Acampo is a tiny village in central California and home to the Skydive Lodi Parachute Center. Thrill seekers across the Golden State flock to leap out of planes at 13,000 feet. However, these 17 skydivers got more than they bargained for when their aircraft barely made it off the ground. The plane experienced engine trouble shortly after takeoff, and the pilot did his best to get the plane back to the airport. But a passing truck driver had other ideas, and the plane tumbled end over end in a nearby field. The plane cruises a few feet above the ground as the pilot tries to make a safe landing. Assuming all 17 skydivers had their GoPros recording, there are probably over a dozen different angles of the same crash. But our cameraman catches the moment when a pickup truck crosses paths with the plane and clips the wing. The brief contact causes the pilot to lose control, and the plane crashes through a California vineyard. They were about a quarter-mile east of the airport when the plane crashed, which isn't too far when you're traveling that fast. Had that truck driver been paying attention, our pilot might have made it to the runway. Thankfully, all 17 skydivers walked away without a scratch, and the pilot only suffered a few scrapes and bruises. Needles, California is a small desert city in San Bernardino County. It shares a border with Arizona and Nevada, nestled between the Mojave Desert and the Colorado River. It's a pretty scenic flight for recreational pilots making the journey between Needles and LA. But for Mark and Nicole DeLulo, it was a terrifying experience. They had just taken off from Needles en route to Chino, a small city due east of LA. But their engines stalled mid-flight with nothing but the Mojave Desert below them. Mark was forced to make an emergency landing and only hoped he could maintain radio contact in the vast nothingness. Nicole records as Mark maintains control of the plane. You can see the propeller stalling out as the desert floor inches closer and closer. Eventually, the plane hovers over the ground, and Mark tries to put her down as smoothly as he can. But there is little you can do when landing in the open desert. The plane hits hard, but never rolls over. It finally stops in a cloud of dust, and Mark and Nicole walk away without a scratch. According to CBS News, Mark owns an aviation maintenance business. He was testing some recent work on his Beechcraft Sundowner and thought he'd take his wife for the ride. But the engine suddenly failed, leaving Mark with no choice but to touch down in the desert. Thankfully, they didn't spend long in the 105-degree heat, as the San Bernardino Fire Department flew in to save the day. To see another video just like this one, then be sure to click the link on screen now. As always, thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.